Hi, and welcome to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and if you may have noticed, I'm actually recording my face. It's probably going to be very awkward because I don't really do this that often, so I'm going to give it a go. Hopefully it's a little bit nicer for you guys to actually see me every so often. If not, I can just stop now. Other than that, I just want to say thank you for all the support and watching all my videos, and I hope they've been useful for you, and hope you're enjoying a lot of the free data. I'm going to change some things a little bit, mostly the way that I'm going to do these little short courses. I think the one I did was a little bit too long. I'm going to try and make it so it's shorter, so into like little projects that you can probably do over the weekend. And with this first one, we're going to do the VFX core skills for beginners. So we're going to go over pretty much most of the core skills that you'll want to learn to sort of get your own projects out there. And we'll go through every bit very briefly. This is not a tutorial on every single one. We're going to just go through and get a project done. Then you can sort of elaborate it on a little bit later. So the first one we're going to do is this VFX core skills for beginners. And we're going to go through your basic VFX pipeline. So if you were doing, say if you had an idea for a project, this is something that you would, it's probably your full or planning to go through and complete your project with organized ease, as I would say, because if you just go in it guns blazing, it can be really annoying. You trip up and do things that make things more difficult for yourself when you could have it really easy just by having a very simple plan. So I'm just going to go through this basic pipeline that you want to kind of do for your projects. So thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoy this new tutorial series. Cool, so we're going to start with our VFX core skills for beginners with part one is your basic VFX pipeline. And the reason why I say it's your basic VFX pipeline, because it's kind of a stripped down version of larger companies' pipelines, but because you don't have the support of a large company and you might just be at home doing your own stuff, that's why we're going to call it your basic pipeline, because you're going to be doing all the work. And you kind of want to tailor it to yourself, but this is what I do when I do my little projects. And as you can see in this sort of little thumbnail here, this is the main project that we're going to do. We're just going to make this bird box and place it in a plate. So I'm just going to go through and just show you some of the stuff that we'll actually do. So this will be the plate as we go through. We can see it's tracked. So it's kind of the final grade. As you can see that now in this one, it's gone to our linear scale. And you can see the different passes that we're going to do. And I'm going to go through all the parts that sort of get you to this place. So I'm going to start with the first thing that you want to do is start with your idea. So you can sort of see here that I've got a really basic pipeline for you to sort of plan your stuff. So at the top left, you can see you've got the idea. And this is fairly simple. It's your idea, really. So, write it down, put it on a notepad or something. And this is where it all stems from. It all comes from here. So when you have an idea, you kind of want to create your story, whether if it's not even a story or whether if it's just a single shot. For this instance, there's not really a story. It's just a single shot. So we don't have to do all of this on, say, this one. But on our next sort of core skills one, we will go through a more sort of thorough version of this. I just want to go through and sort of explain it. So you have your idea, and you obviously need a story if you're doing a story. If not, if it's just something very simple, it's fine. It doesn't have to have a story. And yeah, it's entirely up to you. But if you do, you want to go through these sort of steps because it just makes it a little bit easier for yourself to keep it organized. So then you want to go onto a storyboard, which is sort of blocking out your story and putting pen to paper and getting an idea of shots and how many shots you're going to take and what it's going to involve, basically. And then you can also do concepts, which is like design style, what it's going to look like, your characters and stuff like this. For this case, our concept's very simple. It's a bird box. We've got reference for it. But most of this we went through quite quickly. And a lot of this comes all towards your sort of shoot plan. And you can even do, if you've really got a good concept and storyboard, you can do previs to get a more better look of it. And this is basically you putting your storyboard and concept into a 3D sort of animation. Doesn't have to be like finished or anything. It's a rough overview of what everything looks, and it will give you a really good idea of what your story is going to look like. And this is kind of just like your first version, let's say, like your draft version is your previs of all this. And this actually helps all of this in your shoot plan, because once you've got your previs, you can start to decide actually what's going in shots, what's going to be needed in shots and stuff like that. So let's say if we went to previs, we go to our shoot plan, and you probably want to go into shot requirements. So for this, we've got our bird box. So it's going to be a 3D, pretty much 3D and 2D comping. It's not going to be too complicated. Some texturing, which is 2D, 3D. But it's mostly what we can do to make our lives a lot easier, which then comes to data acquisition. So data acquisition is one of the most important things that you can do when you're out on set, because it helps everyone on the workforce. Like, everyone in the pipeline relies on stuff like this, and sometimes you don't get any of it, and it makes it difficult. But when you do have all of this, it makes everything so much easier. And you can go through this sort of method to make your life easier and get projects out quicker, and not kind of wasting time figuring stuff out that you've missed. But getting all this sort of stuff is really important. I would say your scan and measurements is your number one priority of going on set. Getting all that data so you can get everything in scale, because scale is the key thing to making things look real. Your HDRI for your lighting, and I'll always go through and do this on a DSLR, but you can use 360 cameras. They're just not as good. Your balls and chart. Some people think these are redundant now, but they're actually more important than people realise. Your balls and chart play quite an important role in getting your HDRI and lighting in the right orientation and colour space. So these two, these sort of three, if you get all these three, you're pretty already on a good start, and you'll probably be having a fairly easy project and pretty chill, depending on what you're putting in, that is. It could be a very difficult shot, but generally if you've got your scan and measurements, your HDRI, your balls and charts, like your balls and charts will be in like your plate, and your chart will also be in your HDRI. So if you've got those three, you should be pretty in a good place. But also texture ref to help with texturing. This is also really important, because this helps the texture artists to get reliable and correct textures that were actually on set instead of just Googling them. And it just helps them loads. And camera data. And this is good for match move, layout, comp, and all that sort of stuff. Most cameras keep it in the metadata, and a lot of larger sort of film crews will have so many people covering the camera data aspect, you'll have tons of it. But if you're just by yourself, you just want to make sure you really get down the type of camera it is, because it's the sensor size is really the most important thing. Because if you've got your scanner measurements, everything else is easier. But generally, if you have the time, you want to get your focal lengths for what shots, you want to get your lens grids and stuff like that. And all this stuff makes it a lot easier. So when you think about it, there's actually loads to do on the data acquisition side. There's tons. And we'll go through each of these when we've done this section. So we will go through each part, and we'll go thoroughly through each one. So you'll get to build the project with me, and hopefully it shouldn't take too long. Then obviously once you've planned all this and you know what you need to get, so you've got your shot requirements, this is all under your shoot plan. So you know you're going to need scans, HDRI's balls, texture and camera data, and you know what's going into shots. So then it's all just down to filming. So if you're doing your own projects, it's just have fun and try and get all the data, basically. Because when you're working in a studio, the likelihood of you going out and filming stuff is not going to be that common. Only very few people go out on set and film stuff. So if you're doing your own filming, it's just enjoy it. Not enjoy it while you can, but it's you'll probably do this mostly by yourself, But when you're working, you probably will very rarely go out on set unless you've got the specific skill set that's required to go out on set. So now we'll move on to what I call the rushes. Well, it's what everyone calls the rushes, it's not what I call it. And the rushes is basically you've finished filming and you've just got all your data. So imagine your rushes is basically all your footage, all your images on your DSLR, all your camera data, all your notes, drawings, scans, set scales, and stuff like that. So it's just everything basically you did on the day. So the first thing that you really want to do is data ingest. And that's fairly simple. It's getting all your data off cards. And if there's lots of it and it's quite precious, you probably want to make backups. But if it's a small project, generally keeping it on, like, I keep everything on my cards and stuff until I finish the project. You might want to make duplicates, it's up to you. But generally, I don't delete it off my camera unless I'm filming something else. Just so that's my backup as well. So I've got data housekeeping. This is also really important as well. Basically, it's keeping everything organized in the right place and not just like copying files into random places where it's just, and then you can never find it. And it's a pain in the butt for anyone to find stuff. So you want to make sure everything's like kept in nice, tidy files and neat and tidy so it's easy to find. But it's mostly for yourself. This is, like I said, this is your VFX pipeline. So we've got transcode footage. So if you're shooting raw, basically anything, you need to transcode your footage with VFX to get it into a linear color space or into ACES color space, which is what everyone uses at the moment. And we'll briefly go on this, but this is also really important, keeping all of our sort of data in the same color space, so we don't have mixed color spaces and things doing weird stuff. But we'll go through this with our footage. Our edit ref. So if you really want to, you don't have to, but once you've transcoded your footage and got it all on your computer, you can do a quick cut of all your shots. So if you've got like 10 shots you've done, you just do a quick cut so you can look at it together. And your edit ref will be a good sign whether if you need to film more stuff or if you've got too much stuff. Because don't forget, you've still got to render all this stuff as well. So this is a good place to do it earlier on to check your sort of cut and your whole shots. If it works together, if you need to go out and film more or if you need to cut more out of it. So yes, and then like if you're in a big company, a lot of this stuff will be going on simultaneously, so everyone will be doing all this together. So you won't have to worry about doing it in a specific order. But because you're by yourself, you probably want to go for a specific order so you can get it all done out the way and not have to worry about it. So probably the longest thing that will take is the photogrammetry, depending on what set you're taking. So the photogrammetry is the scans, creating the scans of the set, props, and all that sort of stuff. This could take a while. This might not take very long. Depends on how many images you've taken. Your HDRI, that won't take very long, and that's just processing your images into a panoramic. Your balls chart, this will come under transcode footage as well. And the same with texture ref, that can go under transcode footage, so make sure it's in the same color space. Not always, this can be left alone, but it depends on how you're working. And camera data. Getting all your camera data, all your notes, all types of cameras into one place so everyone knows what camera it is and what shots were what. So then you've got post-viz, which you don't have to really do this. You can do, and it is really useful, and it's basically doing really quick sort of getting all your stuff into the shots, basically, really roughly, so you can see what your 3D stuff is going into your shots. So let's say we just put a rough box on the tree, but because this is only one shot, we don't really need to do that. So we can, if you're doing like loads of shots, it's probably post-viz and pre-viz are actually really important. It gives you a good idea of what your shot's going to be like and what it's going to look like, and how the edit works. So if you've got lots of shots, pre-viz, post-viz are really important for your story and how it plays through. So for this, we don't need to do it really. We can, but it'll just be very quick because it's just a bird box. So then we go into production, which is kind of like your main sort of core skills. Like knowing all this sort of stuff is you don't really have to. Most people just learn one thing, and then they just stay in that one area without understanding a lot of the other areas. But you don't have to know everything about all of this. If you've got a good understanding of it, it will just make you such a better artist. And it's understanding other people's, because you may be like the best at what you know, but if you just don't understand what other departments are doing, sometimes it can be quite difficult to chat with them or communicate with them, because you don't know their struggles. And everyone's got struggles. There's nothing you can really avoid, but it's good to have a good understanding of all of it. So we're going to production, and this is not necessarily, this is in an order I would do it, because it's, like I say, this is not this is your production VFX pipeline. In a big company, this will all be happening pretty much simultaneously and all together. But if you're doing it by yourself, you really want to start with the layout first, because the layout is pretty key. That brings your photogrammetry, that can bring your HDRI and balls chart into play. So this is basically setting your entire scene up into the correct scale, correct orientation, and possibly even placing your HDRI and setting up your balls and chart in the correct place. Say you might not have these, but that's why I'm supplying you with. You can download all the data, so you can follow this all through. So don't worry if you haven't got the equipment to get all this. I'm just going to give it to you, so it's fine. So then once you've done your layout, because you get two types of layout, you get technical layout and creative layout. And I'll go more into this, but at the moment we'll just do technical layout, which is making everything's correct in the right scale, right place, and making sure it's all logical. Then we'll do the match move, which I'm sure most of you probably already know about match move if you've done any of my other tutorials. I've got loads on match move. Then we'll do the modeling. We'll model the bird box, and we'll get it all modeled UV'd, and we'll place it in. We might do some post-viz and see what it looks like, get an idea of what it's done, what it looks like when it's modeled. Then we'll texture it. We'll bring this into Substance, and we'll do some very quick, simple texturing on it. Like, we're not going to be spending. Well, you can spend days and weeks on it, but I just want to get something that you can do in a weekend, so you get like a quick win, and you can get more of an understanding. Rigging, we're not really going to need rigging, but I've put it in there anyway, unless you want to rig a bird box. There's not really much point unless you're putting a bird in there. Animation, very much the same. I've put it in there because these are still very important parts of the pipe. VFX, any effects that are going in there, which we're not doing. Lighting, which we will be doing. This coincides with our HDR and our balls and chart. Rendering, we'll be doing very simple rendering. We won't be doing any AOVs. We just want to try and get it looking as nice as possible in the render view. And then we'll go to composite and grade, which it's not going to be a composite. It's just going to be literally A over B, reapplying the distortion. Then we'll place the grade on top, and that's what you'll get your finished look, like that. So that's pretty much. We'll go through all of it. I know I've chatted on for quite a bit, but yeah, you can see here. You've got your idea, then you create the story and storyboard concept, then you go to your shoot plan. And if you just go through this, everything's like, say if you've just got an idea of, like, I tried to think of something really simple, and I was like, what's really simple, and it won't take very long. I was like, bird box. So it's just one shot, so I can probably skip half of this. But if you're doing multiple shoots, it's probably a good idea to go through all this. And in the next one, we'll do something more thorough, and we will create storyboard, and we'll go through all this in much more detail. But it's going to be a much longer series. But I want this to be quick, so you can all do it. So yeah, that's your basic VFX pipeline. You can also elaborate on that. You don't have to do it this way. This is how I do it, and this is the most efficient way for me. And you can sort of adjust this to anything you want. But this would be a very good foundation to start from, to get yourself going. And like I say, don't forget to download this data, because I know it's only a little bird box, but by the time you've got to this stage, you'll probably understand all of this, and you'll just be you'll be able to go on to things with much more clarity and knowing what goes into VFX. Then you get to see what part of the pipeline you like. I like modeling, so I like doing that. But you might find that you might like doing something else. Then you can focus on those areas. But this is like the general sort of your basic pipeline, basically. And I'm pretty much going on quite a lot. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Hope it didn't scare you away with my face at the start. But yeah, if you've enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.